Sarah Hawkins clutched the shears with trembling hands, watching her chestnut locks tumble to the cabin floor like autumn leaves. Each decisive snip severed more than hair. It cut away the life she'd known, the daughter she'd been raised to. The future laid out before her like a neatly stitched quilt. The face, staring back from her mother's tarnished mirror, belonged to a stranger, sharp-jawed, determined, hair roughly shorn to the nape. She bound her chest with strips of cotton until her breath came in shallow gasps, then donned her late brother's. Clothes, shirt hanging loose to hide her figure, trousers cinched tight with a leather belt, boots stuffed with rags to match her small feet to his larger ones. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Samuel Hawkins, she practiced, her voice deliberately pitched. Lower, rougher at the edges. The name, her brother's name, felt strange on her tongue, but necessary. The Texas Rangers wouldn't accept Sarah, but they might take Sam, especially with the Apache raids intensifying along the border. They needed every man they could get. 3 days ago, her world had collapsed when raiders struck their homestead. She'd been in town, trading eggs for supplies. Her return revealed only smoke, blood, and the broken bodies of her family. Father sprawled by the well, mother crumpled on the porch steps, little sister half hidden beneath an overturned wagon. Only her brother had died fighting, his rifle empty beside him. The Rangers had come too late, as they always did. Captain Jack Harding had removed his hat, offered condolences wrapped in empty promises of justice. "We'll find who did this, miss. You have my word. Words, just words. The law wasn't riding fast enough, wasn't reaching far enough. The homesteaders remained vulnerable while bureaucrats in Austin debated funding and jurisdiction. Something inside her had hardened then, crystallized into purpose sharp as broken glass. Her decision was simple. If justice wouldn't come to her family, she would bring it herself. The Ranger recruitment station in Fort Davis had been set up in the back room of a saloon, the air thick with tobacco smoke and whiskey fumes. A grizzled sergeant looked her up and down with skeptical eyes. "You ever fired a gun, boy? Killed a man?" "Both," she'd answered, her voice carefully measured. It wasn't a lie. Her father had taught all his children to shoot, and during the last Comanche raid 2 summers back, she'd defended their livestock with deadly accuracy. "My family was just killed by Apaches. I aim to make that right." The sergeant's expression had softened marginally. "Vengeance is a poor reason to join, but it'll do for now. Captain Harding's Company D leaves at dawn. Get yourself a bedroll, and a horse if you've got one. Now." As the first pale fingers of dawn stretched across the horizon, Samuel now, waited by the livery stable, her family's chestnut mare saddled and ready. 22 men gathered in the dusty street, checking cinches and loading ammunition. Their faces were weathered, eyes wary, bodies hardened by frontier life. No soft edges anywhere. Captain Harding arrived last, his bay stallion prancing beneath him. His gaze swept over the assembled recruits, pausing briefly on Sarah. "You're the Hawkins boy," he said, recognition flickering across his features. "Didn't mention you had a brother when we found your folks." Sarah's heart stuttered, but her voice remained steady. "Never came up, sir." Harding studied her a moment longer. "You're mighty young. Old enough to shoot straight," she countered. "Old enough to bury my family." Something that might have been respect crossed his face. "We'll see what you're made of soon enough. Rangers don't coddle new blood. Don't expect—" "Coddling, sir? Just a chance." Harding nodded once, then addressed the company. "We're tracking a band of Apache raiders led by Black Knife. They've hit 3 homesteads in 2 weeks. Our job is to find them before they strike again. It's rough country ahead, gents. Anyone not prepared to ride hard and shoot straight should turn back now." No one moved. Sarah kept her spine straight, eyes forward, mimicking the stance of the men around her. "Mount up," Harding ordered, and the company sprang into motion. As they rode out of Fort Davis, Sarah felt eyes on her back. Glancing over her shoulder, she met the steady gaze of a ranger riding just behind her. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a silver-flecked beard and knowing eyes. Daniel Byrne, he introduced himself, spurring his horse alongside hers. Most call me Bear. Sam Hawkins, she replied, deepening her voice. Know these parts well, Sam. Born and raised near Horsehead Crossing, she answered truthfully. My pa taught us every trail and waterhole between here and the Pecos. Bear nodded approvingly. Good. Captain values men who know the land. His eyes narrowed slightly, though you don't look much like a man just yet. How old are you, boy? 19, she lied. At 22, she was older, but her smooth face would raise fewer questions if they believed her a youth on the cusp of manhood. 19, Bear echoed doubtfully. Well, out here it's not years that age a man, but what he's seen and done. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small burlap pouch. Tobacco. Chew it. Rangers expect it, and it'll roughen that voice of yours. Sarah accepted the pouch with a nod, uncertainty fluttering in her stomach. Bear's eyes held something, knowledge, or suspicion, she couldn't tell which. But his advice seemed genuine, protective even. Thanks, she managed. He tipped his hat. Rangers look after their own, boy. Remember that. As they rode into the rising sun, Sarah felt the weight of her deception pressing down like a physical thing. The tobacco pouch felt heavy in her pocket, a reminder of how much she had yet to learn about being a man in this company. But beneath the fear ran a current of fierce determination. The Apache who'd massacred her family were out there, and wearing her brother's clothes, carrying her father's rifle, she would find them. Whether as Sarah or Samuel, she would have justice, or die in the attempt. What she hadn't counted on was Captain Jack Harding's piercing gaze, returning to her again and again as they rode, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle that didn't quite fit together, 4 days into the Apache hunt, Sarah's muscles screamed with a pain unlike anything she'd known. Ranch work had hardened her, but nothing prepared her for riding dawn to dusk, sleeping on rocky ground and maintaining constant vigilance. Worse than physical discomfort was the mental strain of her disguise, remembering to stride rather than step, spit instead of swallow, lower her voice, and hide when nature called. The company followed a dry creek bed through scrubland where mesquite and prickly pear offered little shade against the punishing Texas sun. Sarah chewed Bear's tobacco, fighting nausea as the bitter juice coated her tongue. She'd watched the other rangers closely, learning to spit with reasonable accuracy, though she swallowed more than was advisable. Captain Harding halted the column with a raised hand. The silence was immediate. 22 men frozen in their saddles, eyes scanning the horizon. Sarah followed their gaze to a thin spiral of smoke rising from a ridge 2 miles distant. Might be a campfire, Bear muttered beside her. Might be trouble. Harding motioned for his lieutenant, a whip-thin man named Garrett with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. They conferred briefly before Harding addressed the company. We split here. Garrett takes half the men around the South Ridge. I'll take the rest through the canyon. If it's Black Knife's band, we need to know their numbers before engaging. The captain's eyes swept the rangers. Byrne, Carson, Jenkins, Rodriguez, Hawkins, with me. The rest with Garrett. Sarah's stomach tightened at being chosen for Harding's group. She'd hoped to remain anonymous in the ranks, not under the captain's direct scrutiny. Stay close, Bear advised, as they separated from the main company. Watch the captain, not your own shadow. They entered a narrow canyon where hooves echoed against limestone walls. The air hung still and hot, carrying the scent of dust and horse sweat. No birds called, no insects buzzed. The silence pressed against Sarah's ears like cotton wool. Dismount, Harding ordered, when the canyon narrowed. Further. Lead your horses. Hawkins, take point. You said you know these trails. Sarah swallowed hard, passing her reins to Bear. She moved ahead cautiously, scanning for signs of passage. broken twigs, disturbed stones, tracks in the occasional patch of sand. Her father had taught her to read the land as clearly as any. "Book, trail's been used recently," she reported, keeping her voice low and gruff. 3, maybe 4 riders, unshod ponies." Harding appeared at her shoulder, so suddenly she nearly startled. "How can you tell they're unshod?" "Depth of the impression," she answered, pointing to a faint hoofprint. "Angle of the stride. Apache ponies are smaller too, different from cavalry mounts." The captain studied her face with unsettling intensity. "Your father teach you that?" "Yes, sir. He scouted for the army before settling down. He taught you well." Something shifted in Harding's expression, not suspicion exactly, but a keener interest that made Sarah's skin prickle. "What else do you see, Hawkins?" She scanned the narrow passage. "They're watching us right now." The words had barely left her mouth when a war cry shattered the canyon's silence. Apache warriors materialized on the ridge above, arrows raining down like deadly hail. "Take cover!" Harding shouted, dragging Sarah behind a boulder as arrows thudded into the dirt where she'd stood. The canyon erupted in gunfire. Sarah drew her brother's rifle, its weight familiar in her hands. An Apache warrior appeared on the ridge above them, drawing his bow. She sighted, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. The warrior fell backward, his arrow flying harmlessly into the sky. "Good shot," Harding acknowledged, firing his revolver at another attacker. Bear bellowed from somewhere to their left, the boom of his shotgun echoing off canyon walls. Rodriguez screamed, a wet, terrible sound